Alrighty, shall we get started? Well, how would you like to do this last segment? Do you have a preference? Some questions? Let's get some many questions out of the way at this point. Or assist you in clarifying something you might need.
I have a question. If there was a situation from a number of years back, 3 years back, where say an amount of money was involved and there was an exchange of letters and so on, and the matter is seemingly closed at this point, is there any way to go back and revisit?
What kind of give me a kind of a little sample of it. Doesn't have to be the.
Well, let's say that I had left. I made a decision to leave my job based on a amount that had been put in writing to me as to what my pension was worth. And 2 hours before my last shift, I got a phone call that, whoops, there's been a mistake. You know, and it was to the tune of over $100,000 against my favor. So anyway, long story short, I chose to leave anyway. And I can't remember if I'd signed anything indicating that, you know, the matter was closed or you know, I wouldn't pursue it any further. But I just wondered if there's a way to go back on things like that to present another offer.
Our contract's dynamic?
Seeking for a remedy to recoup what I feel was wrongly. They are dynamic.
Our contract's dynamic?
They are, yeah.
Why couldn't you?
So even though you may have signed something that said the matter is closed, I won't be pursuing any further action, that sort of thing.
Let's see if they want to hold their claim. Contracts are dynamic. They can move. You send in the right paperwork.
Maybe that's something we can look at.
They agree to it. They got a problem, don't they?
Maybe that's something we can look at when it comes to
Sure.
We did.
Yes, you said sovereign remedy. There was three things: HR 192, USC 7310, and you couldn't remember the third one. You were saying three things that provide sovereign remedy.
No.
HR 192.
I use some examples, in UCC 3419. Remember, whatever you negotiate for is, it's not, sovereign is just authority. You're authority. You're the only one that can bind yourself into a contract. Right?
Yeah, just when you had mentioned it, sounded like there were these three things that kind of,
You mean in a conditional acceptance I often do?
perhaps that was what we're talking about.
Yeah, sometimes I throw the kitchen sink and I conditionally accept your offer. Condition precedent, or upon presentation of a bona fide claim in accordance with UCC 3419, House Joint Resolution 192. Your mother bakes cookies on Wednesday and gives me a dozen of them. I mean, you can do all sorts of. It's being silly, but it's not far off from the facts. If a warden can agree to pay $40,000 for a chess set, right?
From an inmate.
From an inmate or whatever, what can anybody do? Anything they want. If everybody volunteers to go to prison, right? Is that what they say? That's what Robert Bork said. So guys who aren't liable on that charge, who become liable via suretyship, can go to prison for a decade or life, then I guess you can agree to anything you want. So can the other party. Not a pleasant thought. Or is it? to be responsible for yourself, right? Whatever you want to do, it's your choice.
That also cuts both ways. If you think, oh, I got all this handled, and then somebody else makes you an offer and you accept it, then you're in trouble again.
Somebody makes you an offer. It's all about offers, right?
You mentioned eliminating the trustee and the trust arrangement for, say, a mortgage.
Right?
How is the trustee eliminated? Can you just explain that? Is it
Who appointed the trustee? The grantor or settler, right? Can a grantor or settler unappoint?
Yeah.
That's right. Because it doesn't belong to the trustee, does it?
Does there not have to be another trustee appointed then?
Yes, it does.
There has to be one.
If you're going to have a trust relationship. Yeah. So put your trustee in, not the banks. Right? So in these documents I've given Juanita, you'll see reconveyances and notice of replacement of trustee, etc.
The grantor cannot be the trustee.
I think he can.
Or
But in a trust relationship, you have to have divided title. Are you sure you want a trust relationship anymore?
you have to be able to trust them.
On a mortgage, do you want to trust anymore? That's divided title. I'd rather collapse it and have both titles.
Yeah.
But for purposes of getting the thing done, you'll just replace the trustee and some of that kind of stuff. Go through that documentation. Apply contract law to everything you've been learning here. Offer and acceptance. What happens when the bank receives notice that you've replaced the trustee? They have 4 doors. Don't they? What's the county recorder going to do when you put in the proper filing? Substitution of trustee. They're not there to approve or disapprove any of that, are they? They're simply a public forum to register whatever's filed. I've got a buddy that had a judgment entered against him. They put it on the county recorder up in Alaska. He put a notice of cancellation of the judge's order. Yeah.
Did anybody respond to his cancellation notice?
He actually he seized the judge's and the prosecutor's bank accounts. He's done some pretty trick stuff. You can give a notice on somebody and it holds for 20 days. That's what the IRS does with you. Notice of intent to seize your bank account, and your bank should contact you about it. We received a notice to take the funds out for this and that, but it hasn't been taken out. They can't just take it out unless you agree to it. If they make an offer and presume or assume a clause, you have to rebut the presumption. What does rebut mean? You're presumed to be a U.S. citizen unless you rebut the presumption. It's an interesting definition. Disprove. Rebut means to disprove. It didn't say to prove them wrong, did it? It says to disprove, which is to not prove. Oh, that's interesting. Got to wrap your mind around that one. It's all offer and acceptance. When we came up here, the court, the this, the that, some of the guys and gals get confused on what kind of, in your remedies, on presumptions, assumptions. Do we just use a notice of private international remedy demand, or do we use a conditional acceptance? Well, are you going after something, or are you responding to something? What do you have for rebut?
Rebuttal evidence is the only
No.
thing you find here.
Rebuttal evidence, huh?
If you so you and then the rebutter you've got
A rebutter. Rebut. To contradict, refute, or oppose, especially in a formal manner by argument, proof, etc., as in a debate. To force back, to provide opposing arguments. The definition I liked when I found it was disprove. And I don't care for that definition or anything, because to argue and the rest of that just doesn't go with my understanding of getting remedy as a sovereign, nor comports with the scriptures. So a lot of the stuff that I hear from people or I look up, unless it comports with the scriptures, I don't go along with it. This is why I kind of didn't like maybe some of the other guru stuff that talk about DTC and you got to do this and you got to do that. It doesn't make a lot of sense to give my allegiance to the DTC. I got to sign up and this, that, and the other thing.
what's the DTC?
Depository Trust Corporation, where some people are teaching that you have an account there and there's $3.5 billion in it. If you get this and do this, you can access it. And if you follow him around long enough, he'll let you be one of the chosen ones to get in with you first because he knows the way and all this other stuff. You know who I'm talking about.
That's some serious coin.
That's just one social security card.
Yeah.
If you have 10 of them, then you're supposed to have 300. So
Yeah, all you have to do is get 10 new Social Security cards, and I think you can get one every 4 months, so in 3 or 3.5 years. So keep going to the seminars and get the. That's what I said. What? I don't think so. So anyway, everybody's different. Everybody has what their own mind. As you run across different concepts, whether they belong with Jack Smith or Gordon Hall or Winston Shroud or Sam Kennedy or whatever, do they comport with under God's law? What would God have you do? Whine, revile, not love your enemy, call him names, rev scammers or whatever, or anything else? Not at all. I think Winston Shroud, I was asking a little bit to Pat a little bit about what is some of his stuff, and he thinks that the IRS is good people and they're great and they're there to help you, and that's good. I'll concur with that, so I wouldn't mind hearing what he might have to say on that basis. So, if you want to get remedy on something, why do you need, what process would you use in your opinion? You're dealing with mortgages, you're dealing with this, you're dealing with that. Do you think people are due a due process? I like the definition of law of the land. You've heard it's the law of the land, right? Well, which context is that meant in? Because Black's 5th, 6th, 4th will tell you the law of the land is most clearly intended the general law, which hears before it condemns, which proceeds upon inquiry, and renders judgment only after trial. Sounds like our 3-part due process, doesn't it? Interesting. You think it's truly as simple as just 1, 2, 3? Yeah, it is. 1, 2, 3, and hold your mud. Believe it or not, yeah. So it's within your grasp to get your remedy. You saw my sister's a simple, hey, you owe me your bill $49. I didn't approve this. Quit doing it. The guy you said worked here hadn't worked here in years. And you saw their response. You got to get it in your mind. It's not what they say. It's interesting. Sue Taylor called me while we were at lunch, and I asked her what it was. She was behind bars for 27 months. The prosecutor just sent her a bill for the whole thing. about 300 hours at 125 an hour. Blah, 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 this and that comes around 37,000 to set expenses too, but hadn't done that. What's going on?
300 hours of what? Court time?
Well, over the last 3 years for prosecuting her and putting her in jail.
Oh, okay.
She's now giving her a bill for doing it. Yeah. Kind of cool, huh? And if she don't pay, she's going to take her back to court. Huh?
He's giving
It was a female prosecutor, so she's given a bill to the gal, Sue Taylor, that was thrown in jail for those last 27 months.
She don't work
It's
for her.
another offer.
Huh?
She doesn't work for her. She works
So
an
what's that
offer.
got to do with it?
It's just an offer. Just an offer.
It's just an offer. But it's interesting. There's no total on the bill or expenses for the travel and hotel. So it doesn't sound likely like we're talking about the issue being really a bill, is it? Maybe just to see what she's going to do with it, right? Whoever heard of that?
Playing games.
Playing games. Is that okay?
Yeah.
What if she'd like to maybe consider the IRS would like to go after her? Talking to the prosecutor says, well, why don't we send her a bill and see what she does with that?
Mm.
Let's see if she's got her head turned around and going to act like a sovereign, right? See if she's going to fight and argue, go silent, any of those things. I don't know, but much like there was a bomb at the federal court building, I thought it was you. Really? Does this prosecutor really expect Sue to pay the bill? Doesn't sound logical to me. So it must be something else, huh? Whenever you'd have eliminated everything else, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. You send me a bill but you don't total it up. Whoever heard of that? Plus there's no expenses. And you're talking about 175 an hour, but adjustments for CPI, and it comes out to 125 an hour. So 300 hours times 125. What is that? Doesn't sound real logical. Unless maybe it isn't meant to be logical, is it? I got to think about it. She's going to email it to me, but kind of fun to figure it out.
If she wasn't to pay it, could it be considered a benefit?
Huh?
They're sending her a bill, and like it's a benefit that they had prosecuted.
Well, more like a bill just for having to prosecute you.
Court costs.
You know, for her time.
Yeah.
You know, the government's time for doing it. So what do we want to work on the rest of this time? Do you feel like you have a basic understanding of what this game is?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's contract, it's offer and acceptance. And the purpose of doing a contract or obtaining a contract, so to speak, your administrative proceeding is to obtain a what?
Remedy.
A claim? A claim, right? So you can, because that's all that's ever going to be weighed is the claims. In a court, it's just the claims. All those court places are claims. Anything to the contrary, you're going to find yourself in an equity court at the mercy of the judge, who kind of does whatever he wants. People don't understand that.
Equity court versus what?
A law court.
Well,
A what court?
contract.
Contract court. Once law was sitting on the bench, and mercy knelt the weeping. Once a contract was sitting there. Judges take notice. They want to know your social security number. Go ahead and tell them one and see what happens to you. Go ahead and answer some questions and see what kind of rights you have after that. Go ahead and argue and see what you get. So, what shall we do? A little practice here?
Well, I have a quick question about offering information. Like, I remember Winston said, he asked the judge, what's your name? The judge wouldn't say anything, he just pointed to his name.
Right.
What's the difference there? Is it because he's not offering his name?
Well, judge didn't give him his name, he just gave him an offer, didn't he? A counter offer. You can't have my name, just consider me Judge Smith in this matter.
Hmm.
But is that really the issue? If you're in there and you are the sovereign and you came in to settle the matter, right?
Right.
Or to help the party settle all claims or charges outstanding, then that's not the issue. What's your name? I'm not looking to lean the judge up.
No, he was using it as an example of how
Yeah.
you can learn from them because they know what they're doing. So he said he had like his name. They'd ask him what his name is, and he'd point or something. Got a name tag or something. But again, it has something to do with like you told a story about a attorney. Somebody said, "Well, what's your bar number?" And he said he answered and he gave the bar number, and then he immediately accepted that.
Except that for assessment of the charges.
Whereas
right?
he could have already known his bar number, but because he asked him and then he answered him with the number, that has a different significance than if he sees it on a piece of paper.
Well, he's going to have to make an offer. He's got to open some business, right?
Okay.
He's got to open the ball. What's your name and number? Attorney John Smith, bar number 52710. I accept that for value and return for assessment of the charges because he's to bring in the deal. I want to know who I'm doing business with, right? Might be an interesting one next time a prosecutor told the judge, what's name and number? It's your court. That's getting very proactive. It's once you get to know what you're doing, that's not an out-of-line position you might consider taking.
I've written down as they've already considered until the pleading comes to an issue. Until the pleading comes to an issue.
Well, pleadings is defined by Black's 4/5 is the process performed by the parties to a suit or action in alternately presenting written statements of their contention, each responsive to that which precedes, and each serving to narrow the field of controversy until there evolves a single point, affirmed on one side, denied on the other, called the issue, upon which they then go to trial. So the purpose of all this back and forth in court as pleadings is to come to an issue, affirmed on one side and denied on the other,
And show
upon which they then go to testing.
cause orders.
Huh?
To show cause.
Well, in a lot of cases, that's what we did. You know, with Sue, we'd gone through the administrative process with the IRS, and then they went silent. They had put in their summation. They felt she was out of line, still was in contempt, hadn't given information, and recommended that she be stay locked up until she provides all that stuff that she can't possibly obtain. Not humanly possible for her. How do you write a bank you don't remember the banks to?
Banter back and forth, even though it was a police officer at your car or in court with them initially, the conditional acceptance back and forth is only because I want to either get to an issue that determines a claim, or we want to get to the issue that we're going to deal with.
That makes good sense. That would be your process with him, because the issue is, why are you stopping me? I don't care why you're stopping me. The issue is, who are you and by what authority?
That's what the banter is all.
Yes.
It's really all about.
Or to keep him from actually getting any jurisdiction over you. Because should you not keep your banter going or your talk going, what's going to happen? You're going to go silence. And that can only be, silence can only be equated with fraud, where there is a legal or a moral duty to respond, or where an inquiry left unanswered would be intentionally misleading. That's a very famous Supreme Court case, U.S. versus Pruden.
What if you got a little tongue-tied in the question, you always want to be asking the questions of that police officer by your door? What if the question
catch it on the next question. Let's do it. Police officer says license and registration. You know, basically, whoever you're doing business with, you need to know who it is, right? It ain't going to take you long to understand who are you. May I see some identification? Are you refusing to identify yourself? John did a real good job. For the first 3-4 minutes there, he's holding his mud really nice. Really nice. Stayed calm. And then we got some more bodies in over here and started firing some questions at him, and then he lost his way. Because pretty soon you start finding yourself trying to answer everybody's questions real fast, and you just slow it down.
Also, you might think that if you ask a question a couple times, then they should go away and leave you alone, right?
No such thing.
And sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. Remember, you got to assert your rights. And one of the problems we had with John Stewart in the murder trial situation is when the judge says, "You're the defendant." He says, "I'm here today as John Stewart," and he kind of cringed a little bit. You could see him kind of just be a little bit soft and kind of cringe. And the judge said, "You're the defendant," and you could see him kind of just cringe a little more. But he didn't say it like Juanita started. "I'm here today as Juanita Chung, intervener for the purpose of helping the party settle all claims or charges that are outstanding." You say that a couple of hundred times and it'll be with you forever. It really will. And that's why you get a little, just take a piece. I got a bunch of pieces of paper folded up in my dash. I got them. I got my little this particular James Allen book, and I actually wrote on a couple of folded up pieces of paper. I started another one here, with a definition of that. And over here I might have something like, on this particular piece, I've got contempt and authority. Even though I have authority to find this way, I sometimes look at it and get like that definition. I study it for a while. All the time I'm going over and over this stuff to try and get a feel for it as it relates to me. Or I might have a bunch of folded up pieces like this that have certain things on them that I like. Front and back, which is Romans 12:2. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye renewed by blah, 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 blah. And so until I memorize that, I keep it and go with me. And conform. Be not conformed to this world. And I got conform on it. To behave in a conventional way, especially in accepting without question customs, traditions, prevailing opinion, etc. I say, God is telling me, quit accepting without question customs, traditions, prevailing opinion. What's the prevailing opinion about taxes? Well, you're supposed to pay it. God says don't accept that. And when I see something in World Book Encyclopedia that says this is the IRS, and then I go into cooperative federalism and I see stuff like they got another case in there, McCulloch versus the state of Maryland, and it says, what is it? It's regarding no political dreamer was ever wild enough to think of breaking down the lines that separate the states and of compounding the American people into one common mass. But in fact, that has happened. And that's a case from 1819. Back in 1819, the Supreme Court said no political dreamer is ever wild enough to think of knocking the lines down that separate the states. Want to bet? Look at today. People have no idea that these lines that separate the states, the value of them, what it is. Everybody thinks the states are one country, a nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. There's a book called In Their Own Words. And in that it's like 1,800 court cases. I remember when I first started reading material about when I got the crack in the code, this guy had that too. And so I started reading these 1,800 excerpts from court cases. And I read it for like a half an hour. I tried to flip. I says, "Hey, Scotty, I can't even get any relationship with this book. It's not bouncing off of anything. It's like just reading something I don't even understand. I don't correlate it with anything. And I gave it back to him. Then when I was at Terminal Island, call it 3 years later, that book showed up again. Someone else had it. And I just found it the most interesting book. And I understood it, and I knew how it correlated with me and what it could bounce off of. But a couple of the interesting court cases were talking about the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and where it came from. And what it originally said, I pledge allegiance to my flag. And it was talking the states and this and that and the other thing. It was only later that it got changed to all the things. Boy, you got to see who did it. And it says, yeah, they used to say the Pledge of Allegiance in America like this. And it was held out and up. But then with Hitler and all of that stuff, it was very unpopular, so they changed it to this. And you can see the PTA and all the different groups that were part of that in Virginia or whatever state it was. And you go, oh, man, interesting. And then you look up, I pledge allegiance. Pledge an allegiance. To pledge, to give as security. I'm pledging me, this body, as security. Allegiance. Faith, loyalty. I now look at saying pledge allegiance as a very negative thing. And I can see how they've just slowly cooked us. Or how we slowly cooked ourselves. All of us thinking that government has rule over you. They do not. Unless you give it. And it's really important for you not to be worried about what you did yesterday. Doesn't matter that you might have a driver's license in your pocket and they pull it out and say, aha, that's you. It's like a piece of plastic with ink inside that. To me, it doesn't look like me, but I mean, hey, who might have disabused this nut? They need you to admit it. How can you admit it? What if you go silent? Have you admitted it? Who, yeah. And James Allen, that's really important. Did we talk about the symmetrical development or the true education?
The 3-part.
Yeah. This moral part is so critical. Just the first 5 pages, little stuff like every thought seed sown and allowed to fall in the mind and take root there produces its own. Really? And when you start thinking about those things he says, then you realize the importance of what he said. In all human affairs, there are efforts and there are results. The strength of the effort is the measure of the result. Chance is not. And he goes on, I won't repeat it all, but nonetheless, that's interesting. So nothing is by chance, is it? When you read this and you study it, and you pretty soon you understand, just like this says, every man is where he is by the law of his being. By the what of his being? The contract of his being. I like replacing that word, and it's valuable to me. I understand things differently with the replacement just of a few words. Law also has lots of other definitions and contexts and meanings, and it isn't just that. But when I use that replacement word, it clarifies things for my simple mind, allowing me to see things differently for me. And then I just come back to these simple doors and these simple concepts and precepts. That cooperative federalism, I really enjoy that document because I have to periodically look at it and re-understand in my mind. Like it says, the government of the United States, as was well established in the argument, is one of limited powers. It can exercise authority over no subjects except those which have been delegated to it. Congress cannot, by legislation, enlarge the federal jurisdiction, nor can it be enlarged under the treaty-making power. I remember this really sharp notary that was at Safford, and he used to tell me, oh no, it's under the treaty-making, and they do it this and da-da-da, and I didn't know. But after reading that, it's real easy for me to, pick through what people say from now on. I want to say, when I asked Pat, what does Winston Trout say about the IRS? He says, well, they're great, good people. Oh, I like what I hear already. When I hear somebody else that thing that the gentleman she gave me, I think calls them a rev scammers, my mind already shuts off and tells me what I'm dealing with. When she said Winston Shrout likes the IRS, thinks good of government, I said I like the sound of that. It opens my mind immediately up that this guy's probably in concert with a lot of the things it should be. Although I understand Winston from some of the guys that Winston makes Winston stuff work. But that's because he knows who he is. But it's got to be brought down to something simpler for us, the lay people. For us that we can understand what this game is. Not, it needs to be said something to me. I'm a simple kind of guy, and I had a tough time in high school. It wasn't an easy deal for me, certain subjects. But I didn't know how to study, etc. I do now. Now I enjoy studying, and I enjoy putting my mind to work. You'll do the same. The strength of the effort is the measure of the result. Can you come to this 2-day seminar and leave here without some follow-up in your mind and expect to be successful? I don't think so. I told you, if you're going to get the paradigm, pattern, or model shift in your mind, you need to spend a couple, 2, 3, 4 hours, a couple, 3, 4 days a week on the average doing it.
Oh, question. Sure. It's a good time. So
hold on one quick second.
Yeah, sure.
I had a gal up in one of the gals I'm doing some stuff for up at a LA area. She says, I don't have time to listen to this stuff. I said, well, what are you doing with all your time? She says, I'm in the car 9 hours a day.
Oh my God.
I said, what do you listen to in the car? She goes, oh, you're right. We sometimes fall asleep and we don't realize it. You're busy right now. Some of you have full-time jobs. You don't have time to do that. Well, you are. How much time are you in the car a day? Usually at least an hour or 2 a day on the average for most everybody. So that time should be without a radio, should be with some of this stuff in there. Or like me, I've got my little cue cards, my sheets are up in the visor. I'm driving down the street. I'm not listening to music. I don't care for the radio that much. I have some radio, but I don't listen to it often. I just really don't care for it. I can't stand commercials, so if I got anything, I got some CDs of some favorite songs I grew up with and subsequent, but that's about it. What I like is memorizing stuff on the highway. And everybody rides with me is kind of like, what are you doing? You're reading all the time while you're driving and doing this. Don't worry about it. Everything's covered. Right, Juanita?
Yeah, right. Grab the wheel.
Oh, I tell her, hold the wheel. I'm looking, so, drive for a minute. I got to see this thing. We're going to be fine. I do that to everybody in my car. Hold on, I got to see this. Drive for a minute.
Nobody will be in the car with you and you'll go, hold the wheel.
I love studying this stuff. You'll learn to love it. It's said thusly: the desire of knowledge, like the thirst of riches, increases ever with the acquisition of it. It's habit. What do you want to make a habit? I used to tell the guys in the prison, man, aren't you glad you caught that football game like on May 24th, like 2 months before. I said, that one like 3 Thursdays ago. Did you catch that basketball game? You go, what? I said, exactly. Like, who cares? It's just a game. A long time ago it was said to me, oh, is your life so uninteresting that watching a bunch of men run up and down a grass field chasing a ball is interesting to you? We've gotten into that, contests and watching sports, spectator stuff. Man, is your life that uninteresting? You got to step back and ask yourself. Nothing wrong with sports, nothing wrong with these other things. Moderation. Me, I can't moderate. I really need a huge right swing to get into the things I do. I like studying this stuff. I enjoy it first thing in the morning. Get up, hit your books a little extra early. You can train your mind. Deepak says something. He only sleeps 1 or 2 hours a night. I said, man, that's nice. I'm trying to get trained where I quit needing as much rest. So, anyway, you're going on it.
Yeah, so I'm still trying to make sure I understand the rules of the game as it applies to like attorneys. So like when you're on the phone with Walmart, you're talking to an attorney and he's negotiating with you.
Now, I told you something. When you're talking to people, what did the supervised release gal try to do? What did Walmart's attorney try to do? What does everybody try to get you to do?
Argue.
Why?
Contract.
Get you into dishonor.
Mm.
Can't be talking to these creditors, man. These are bad boys. Got to get you off your creditorship.
So I'm still trying to understand what the attorney's options are in the game. So it's as if they were
In court?
negotiating or on the phone. They're like making counter offers. But when you send them one of these commercial documents in affidavit form, they can't give first person test. They can't
How can
respond
he?
to it.
How can they?
But what if they have someone else who's a witness and they could send an affidavit to respond to your affidavit or something?
Who? The other party?
Another party, their client.
They just don't do it that way. I've never seen them do it that way.
Oh.
They're not going to make any money if this thing settles on the private side, are they?
Oh, I see.
They got to get you into a... they can't fleece their client unless we got to get all sorts of preparation and look at the average client. Kind of looks at that, all these citations and case points, and God, this looks like a hell of a document. Look how thick it is, all this stuff there, and it's incomprehensible to the layperson.
They're playing a whole different game. We're playing chess and they're playing some other thing, and it looks
They're
like
playing a different kind of chess. That's right.
we think we're playing against them. For them to win is to have endless arguments, not to.
When I talked to the gal that came to want to be, I've been appointed your attorney for the second case of revocation of supervision when I was over in MCC San Diego. I said, "You're an attorney, right?" She goes, "Yes." I said, "Can you do anything but argue?" She goes, "No." And they readily admit it. We're here to argue for you. Can you do anything but fight? No. How's that comport with Matthew 5:12? Huh? I really like this gal. She was so sincere, kind of like the captain was, about all I want's the picture. I didn't finish that when he come to the door when they let me go, but the one of the other times he said, "All I want's a picture." I said, "That's it?" And they come by and I said, and I said to him on another time he'd done that, and he said, "What'd you decide?" I said, "Well, I talked to what's his name," and he said, he said, after saying, "You have my word," I said, "I talked to what's his name," and he said, "Well, I'd have to also give fingerprints and program stuff." He goes, "Oh yeah, you got to do that." I'm thinking, he just told me, "No, all I want's a picture, nothing else." And then the next day when we're talking, he goes, "Oh yeah, well, you got to do that."
Sure, all he wants.
Doesn't his word mean anything? But what did he say? "You have my word."
Yeah, but what he's meaning is...
What did he mean?
All I wanted
I told you something. You got my word. He didn't tell me he was being honest. He just says, "You have my word."
Yeah, well, he wanted the picture. He knew the rest would follow anyway, so he just wants the picture.
Yeah,
That's all that's going to happen.
that's right. This gal, she says, the attorney gal, because when I tell you some of the rules is they're going to lie, cheat, and steal, and it's correct. It's proper. Why? Because how else are you going to quit depending on them and turn to God? When are you going to turn to God? How many lies do they have to do? How many of you have heard people really be thrilled with their attorneys? That in a general court case, you've heard how many dissatisfied people. God, he threw me to the dogs. He lied to me. He misrepresented. Or like this gal I told you about with the psychology license. Her attorney said, in her initial charges, she had to report it to the board and all that. And when it got, and the attorney said, there isn't going to be a problem. The board acted like there's going to be no problem. There's a minor thing, a little tax issue, had nothing to do with your license or your practice, etc., won't affect it. And when it gets pled down to a misdemeanor, which it is, no jail time, nothing else, not a problem. Then all of a sudden, now that it's all done, they want to report this and that. All of a sudden, the board's interested. We're going to have to review this. The attorney's saying, "Well, we got a problem here." She said, "What's going on?" I says, "You're a sheep. You're supposed to be sheared." She says, "Man, he told me there's no problem. I felt good." That's why she's all up in a roar. She said, "This is bull." She's just pissed now. Now she's getting pissed. Lied to her. Caught him dead to rights lying to her. And it doesn't make any sense. How bad do they got to treat you to do that? To get you finally to do? But this attorney gal was really neat. She's telling me, you don't, I said, well, I would be happy to have you an attorney upon proof of claim that the record and pleadings of parties haven't settled the matter. She goes, I haven't even seen this thing you're talking about. I don't even know what you're talking about. I said, well, don't you think you should look? She said, look, I haven't seen it. About 20 minutes later in the conversation, when I brought it up again, she goes, I've read it. That isn't going to work. I said, God, this is beautiful. For a minute, I thought she really had she was really being honest or something. I said, what am I, like, stupid? What a beautiful thing. The one thing you can count on, and it's hard to imagine, the one thing you can count on is them to do their job. I rode on a plane with a young couple out here. She said, well, there's going to be money in Social Security for us. I said, of course there will be. How long have they been saying that? Forever. There's always going to be data entry. Social control is best managed through fearless. Keep you worried about no Social Security and 2012 and every other thing. And Y2K and the world's flat and the ozone layer, and we're running out of food, and we're overpopulation, and God, it's just endless, this worry. And I didn't bring it, but I've got a little book, some quotes back from 1787, and the delegates talking about not wanting to give a vote to people in America, because he said something, it's a Delaware congressman said, people are, shouldn't do it because they want information and likely to be misled. That's all. They just want information. People just love gossip and information. They get on and hear these talking heads on TV, all these guys, and Rush Limbaugh. He's so pro-government, it's great. He sounds like he's not, but he absolutely is. Listen to the stuff. Not these guys. You think this is new stuff? This truly isn't new stuff. Nobody puts it in major. Well, they're controlling the media. Yeah, it's their thing. You can't be having them come out. How are you going to tell the truth to people? They're going to stampede and hurt themselves, aren't they? Oh, you heard, we don't have to pay that. That isn't real money. They're going to go crazy. Upset systems, disrupt things, because they don't know how to be in honor. They just take umbrage. This Jon Stewart, we got what we wanted at the last hearing, and he comes out, he's all moping around about it. So what are you doing? He said, well, I didn't think I did. I said, quit whining and bitching. I said, let me ask you this. Did you go into the bar? He says, no. I said, did you go into the bar the last time? He said, no. I said, don't you think it's kind of interesting you're a murder defendant and you're never in the bar? You're not even up there? And he says, God, yeah, you got a point. I've never seen it. I always was in before. I says, that's right. I says, why don't you think about all that you're getting, not what you don't have or what you don't think. And they're not going to come out and ever tell you, aha, you got us. It's not going to happen. You'll get your win, and it'll just like me. I walked out of, I got told a week before, I've never seen a judgment like yours, an order. You don't have to pay anything. You don't have to do any supervised. That's the only word I heard. This is the same guy been telling me for 9.7 months that I have to do it. I have to do it. You can't not do it. Everybody does. Well, and then all of a sudden he got around to reading the order on my counter? No. I happen to know what the order says, and it didn't say anything like that at all. But he was giving me my due, which was really interesting. And then just the day I'm leaving, turn around and try to get a picture again. The staff did, right? That's right, just checking. Want to make sure you want to stay that way on the way out, kid. Would it have mattered if I gave him a picture? I don't know. I don't want to find out, and I haven't heard from him since. I like it. Try and remember some of these basics. It's not what they say, but what they do. And you're not going to get them out on Front Street ever. They don't tie their goat up out front. And you're not getting him. That dude's put away. And he's staying there. When you win, you're just walking out, and that's all. You're just going to have your win. It's never going to be some order, something you can put your hands on and show everybody and all that kind of stuff. Closest we can get is some of these transcripts where we see or we tape it, but they're starting to allow some of that. It's interesting. I think there's a shift coming back, and they're letting it sift out. they really do want us to win.
I
So
think Robert Menard said that there was some judge, a retired judge, that was feeding him hints, like, for his education.
yeah, that gal that Yanez court judge is a gal that retired. I'm thinking I got to get a hold of this woman and take her out to dinner or something. Oh, she's now married. See if I could pick her brain. What a beautiful thing that is.
Robert Menard's sister, I think, is in court somewhere, somehow.
Yeah, she might be a judge or something
Me?
like that.
Possibly. His sister. Do you have a passport to go across the border?
No.
Did you ever get one?
Well, I'm going to do something about it. Yeah. Well, I have Gordon get one, maybe, but I'm trying to figure out how to get a diplomatic one. I've seen a couple of them that some of the guys do and print and do, but it seems to me there's a way to get a diplomatic passport. I went into the post office the other day. Some of my old stuff says they issue 57 kinds of passports, but this particular post office says no, we just have one U.S. passport. So this is not a main post office. I may have to go to the main post office.
Yes, because I think that would be a sovereign post office.
Something to that effect, yeah, rather than a branch post office. So, I'll find the key to it. I've just been doing this other stuff since. I've only been out a little over 4 months. Before that, practicing 8 months doing that stuff, but now I'm finally out and about and want to be doing my traveling and the other things. And it doesn't seem I'm required. It seems I can get a diplomatic passport. I've got some friends that work in the state and that kind of thing, so I got to reach out to them. So, can you get your mind wrapped around that you're the enemy and you really can fix your problems, not too difficultly. It's just going to be a little bit of paperwork, but it's mostly going to be your mouth, and that's why we're not going to have a lot of successes out there until you all wrap your mind around it. There's the practical side of it. That's going to be your whole win. And if your paperwork's no good, won't matter, because it can't get you. They need the practical side, because somebody's got to bring you a charge of some kind and get it to stick on you. They got to get your picture, and that going into a jail. How can a judge even talk to you if they haven't got you booked? Yeah, they could bring you directly in there, but this is where some of the famous quotes, and some have been around the Patriot community for a long time, is asking a judge, do you have a bona fide claim against me? So I don't care if they bring a charge or anything else. You can, much like where the judge asked me, do you have, I suggest you get an attorney, Mr. Hall, before you hurt yourself. And I said, are you suggesting mine? He says, no. And I didn't know what to say. But oftentimes you'll see where a judge just ignores what you said and he brings something else up. My comment to Jack the other day is, why aren't we doing the same simple confess and avoid? John Stewart accomplished it real nicely in the very first hearing we had with him. We had put in a request to abate the proceedings pending an administrative proceeding by me to settle the matter. And he got stuck on just saying that over and over again. And then, boom. I think we're going to have to, and there's no question we have to bring up our request 3 or 4 times in a court. I'm not so sure we can't do simply with, which has been in the past, if you're ever arrested without something, they need to give you, they might arrest you, hold you for a day, hand you an indictment. What are you going to do with that indictment when they slide it under the door? Most guys just hold on to it, throw it in the trash, leave it on the bunk, and then they go into court. And the judge takes judicial notice that you accepted that.
Well, aren't we supposed to agree with our brother or whatever?
Yeah, but somebody slid something under the door, I'm sliding it back. Call them sliders.
How is that not seen as a rejection or as silence?
Argument.
How is that not seen? Well,
Arguing.
If they slide it under the door, in the middle of the night, I slide it back.
It's not what you say, it's what you do.
Again, it's kind of hard because it isn't just always a hard, fast rule, and that's what you're having a little trouble with. That seems like I got to write something on it.
Which door is that?
Well, did anybody actually give it to me, or they just slide it under that cell door, slip it into that? It's kind of a hard thing to understand. It's a conditional acceptance. I say I accept it for value in return for value upon presentation of a bona fide claim, subscribed. But nobody is around. They pushed it under, I pushed it back.
It's not a. Yeah.
I'm just telling you, just do that. If you ever find yourself in jail, if you get locked into a cell, when you've kind of handled all the first stuff right, which might happen, they're going to try and slip some paperwork under your door, slip it to you, or hand it to you.